you. This morning, one of the Democratic leaders who is pushing this bill had a quote in the newspaper where he said that if we cannot get a vaccine bill passed during a pandemic, then we can never get it passed. So they had to wait till we had a pandemic, till a Sunday, with 2 days' notice and no testimony, and we get to come in here and testify for 2 minutes. And they're going to learn this issue in 2 minutes that you and I know it takes years and years of study, because there's been so much effort to obscure the science, the facts, the evidence for decades about what's happening, and the corruption about what's happening here, that people need to have a child injured in order to get motivated enough to begin turning over the rocks and finding the place where all these cockroaches have been hiding for all of these years. I have 2 minutes to speak, to testify in a couple of minutes, but I'm going to tell you a little bit longer story that I would like to tell the Democrats. Because I am a Democrat, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and what they're doing today is antithetical to every value that the Democratic Party has expressed in its 200 years of history. And I came here to remind them of the values that our party is supposed to represent. Somebody this morning asked me about how did we get here. Here's how we get here. I had 3 vaccines when I was a kid. I was fully compliant. Today's children get 72 doses of 16 vaccines. How did that happen? It happened because in 1980, CDC recommended the DTP vaccine, which is now banned in this country. And for 10 years, children took that vaccine. And there was a wave of brain injuries, of deaths, of encephalopathy. 1 out of every 300 children were affected. And the vaccine companies were getting sued. So why? All 4 of them had a DTP vaccine. And guess what? I'm going to do a little side note. The DTP vaccine was banned in this country. Guess where they still use it? In Africa. And it is Bill Gates' flagship vaccine. He gives that vaccine to 161 million children a year in Africa. And in fact, Bill Gates has used his leverage. He gives now $900 million a year to WHO. It gives him its tax deductible, so it's you and I who are paying for that. And it gives him the capacity to control $5.6 billion budget at WHO and dictate policy. And he is dictating policies that benefit his investments in all 4 vaccine companies and his GMOs and Monsanto and all the other stuff. What he does, those African nations rely on the WHO to support their health ministries and their HIV programs and many other programs. Well, the WHO uses that leverage to go to those countries and say, if you do not comply, if you do not give 90% of your children this DTP vaccine, you get no money for HIV or for your health programs. That's the leverage that Gates has. So they do it. And Gates says he has spent $10 billion on vaccines and he has saved 8 million lives, which is great. The problem is he cannot cite a scientific study that shows he saved any lives. And the Danish government looked at the DTP vaccine and said, you know, we've been giving this vaccine for 30 years. They banned it in the United States. We banned it in Denmark. Let's figure out whether it's actually helping African children. So the Danish government, the Norwegian government, and the biggest vaccine company in Europe, the Staten Serum Institute, put money together. They hired the best African vaccine experts in the world, including Peter Abe, who has over 100 peer-reviewed studies on African vaccines and the best reputation. And they went in and they looked to see whether DTP, how many lives it was saving. What they found was that shocked them, because all of those scientists were pro-vaccine. What they found was that the vaccinated children were dying at 10 times the rate of unvaccinated children. They were dying of malaria and bilharzia and dysentery and all kinds of things that nobody ever associated with that vaccine over 30 years. But when they actually looked at the data, they found it was killing 10 times more people than the kids who were unvaccinated. And what did Bill Gates do? And the WHO, when they were confronted with that evidence, they punished the scientists. They silenced them and they defunded them. Now, that vaccine in this country during the 1980s, these companies were being sued, and Wyeth, which was the biggest producer, went to Congress and they said to Congress, we are losing $20 in downstream litigation damages for every $1 that we make from selling this vaccine. And either way, we cannot make this vaccine safely. In fact, we cannot make any vaccine safe. They used this term, which ended up in the statute. They told Congress vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. Like every other medicine. If you give it to enough kids, some of them are going to die. Some are going to get hurt. So they said to Congress, we cannot make money in this industry, and if you do not give us blanket immunity from liability, we're going to stop making vaccines. It was blackmail and bribery at the same time, because they were the #1 donor to Congress. Congress signed that bill, passed that bill, Reagan signed it. And immediately, the industry looked around and said, holy cow, now we've got a product. The biggest cause for every pharmaceutical product is downstream damages from injuries. They said, now we got a product, nobody can sue us. No matter how toxic the ingredient, no matter how negligent our conduct, no matter how sloppy our line protocols, no matter how grievous the injury to your child, you cannot sue us. There's no discovery, there's no deposition, there's no med malpractice, no mass torts, no kind of any suit. So they said, this is a huge windfall for us. Then they said, plus we got another big thing that most Americans don't know about. Vaccines do not have to be tested, safety tested. And the reason for that is an artifact of CDC's legacy as the public health service. The CDC used to be called the Public Health Service, which was a quasi-military agency. That's why people at CDC wear military uniforms and they have military ranks like Surgeon General. The vaccine program was conceived as a national security defense against biological attacks on our country. They wanted to make sure that if the Russians attacked us with anthrax or some other biological agent, we could quickly fabricate and deploy a vaccine to 200 million Americans with no regulatory impediments. So they said, if we call it a medicine, we're going to have to safety test it. And that takes 5 years, because a lot of injuries from medicines have long diagnostic horizons and long incubation periods. You don't see them for years. So let's call it something else. We'll call it a biologic, and we'll say you don't have to test biologics. And that's what they did. Well, these companies in 1986 said, now we got a product, there's no damages downstream, we saved $200 million on the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials. We don't have to safety test it. Plus, there's no marketing costs, no advertising costs, because the government is going to order 76 million children to take this product. It's the perfect business plan. Oh, there was a gold rush. All of these ridiculous vaccines were added to the schedule, like Paul Offit's rotavirus vaccine, hepatitis B, stuff that's not even casually contagious. And here's the punchline. And we saw that date, 1989, an explosion in chronic disease in this country. Not just autism, which went 1 in 10,000 at my generation to 1 in every 22 boys today, 1 in 34. But also all the neurodevelopmental disorders, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, autism, the allergic diseases, peanut allergies, food allergies, anaphylaxis, eczema, asthma, and the autoimmune diseases which everybody here knows about. You should not know the name autoimmune, but everybody here knows that name. Now, juvenile diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis. In 1940, 6% of American children